The Jeep is the symbol of American military might. Everyone knows Willys built the Jeep. Everyone knows Ford mass-produced the Jeep. But neither Willys nor Ford invented the Jeep. A tiny, bankrupt company in Pennsylvania called American Bantam invented the Jeep. American Bantam designed the Jeep, built the first prototype, and proved the Jeep concept worked. Then the U.S. Army took Bantam's blueprints and handed them to Ford and Willys. This is the story of the greatest theft in automotive history. The impossible task. Let's go back to 1940. World War II was raging in Europe. The U.S. Army needed a new lightweight reconnaissance vehicle. The Army wanted something small, tough, and versatile. The Army issued specifications. The vehicle must weigh under 1,300 pounds, have four-wheel drive, seat 3 soldiers, and carry a machine gun. And the Army wanted a working prototype in 49 days. 49 days from contract to drivable vehicle. The Army sent requests to 135 American automotive manufacturers. "Build us this vehicle," the Army said. "Meet these impossible specifications in 49 days." Ford looked at the Army requirements and said, "Impossible." Willys looked at the Army specifications and said, "No." The timeline was too tight. The requirements were too demanding. Major manufacturers refused the Army contract because meeting the deadline seemed impossible. American Bantam was desperate. Bantam was a tiny company in Butler, Pennsylvania. Bantam built small economy cars based on British Austin designs. But Bantam was bankrupt. Bantam was failing. Bantam needed any contract to survive. When the Army asked for bids on this impossible reconnaissance vehicle, Bantam said yes. Bantam had no resources. Bantam had no engineering staff. Bantam was broke. But Bantam had determination and one brilliant engineer named Karl Probst. Probst looked at the Army specifications and believed Bantam could meet them. Probst worked basically alone to design what would become the Jeep. Probst had 49 days to create a vehicle from scratch. Probst worked around the clock. Probst designed the chassis, suspension, drivetrain, and body for the Bantam reconnaissance vehicle. Probst used existing components where possible to save time. Probst borrowed a Continental engine. Probst adapted Spicer axles. Probst created a simple body design that could be stamped quickly. Probst was designing the most important military vehicle in history under impossible time pressure. Bantam delivers the impossible. September 21, 1940, American Bantam delivered the prototype to the Army testing grounds at Camp Holabird, Maryland. Bantam met the 49-day deadline. The Bantam BRC-40 was called the BRC-40, which stood for Bantam Reconnaissance Car, 40 horsepower. The BRC-40 was small, simple, and functional. The Bantam BRC-40 looked like nothing else on the road. The Army tested the Bantam BRC-40 ruthlessly. The BRC-40 drove through mud, over rocks, up steep hills. The BRC-40 carried loads far exceeding specifications. The BRC-40 proved surprisingly capable. The Bantam BRC-40 exceeded Army expectations in nearly every category. The BRC-40 was exactly what the Army wanted. The Bantam BRC-40 had a distinctive rounded grille. The grille looked similar to contemporary Ford styling. The Bantam BRC-40 body was simple stamped steel with minimal curves. The BRC-40 was purely functional, with zero consideration for aesthetics. The Bantam BRC-40 was a tool, not a car. The Army was impressed, but had a problem. American Bantam was tiny. Bantam couldn't produce the 600,000 vehicles the Army needed for the war. Bantam's factory was too small. Bantam didn't have production capacity. Bantam couldn't scale up fast enough. The Army needed massive production that only major manufacturers could provide. So the Army made a controversial decision. The Army invited Willys and Ford to observe Bantam's prototype testing. The Army showed Willys and Ford the Bantam BRC-40. The Army gave Willys and Ford access to Bantam's design. Then the Army asked Willys and Ford to build their own versions based on the same specifications. This was corporate espionage sanctioned by the U.S. government. The Army essentially said to Willys and Ford, "Here's what Bantam created. Copy it. Build your own version." The Army justified this by claiming national security required multiple suppliers, but the reality was the Army took Bantam's design and handed it to bigger competitors. Bantam had no legal recourse. Wartime priorities overrode patent protections and corporate rights. The theft in modifications. Willys and Ford received Bantam's blueprints and specifications. Both companies built their own prototypes. The Willys prototype was called the Quad. The Ford prototype was called the Pygmy. Both the Willys Quad and Ford Pygmy were heavily based on Bantam's BRC-40 design. The basic chassis layout, suspension design, and overall concept came from Bantam's work. But Willys and Ford made modifications. Willys focused on the engine. The Willys Quad used the Go Devil engine, which produced more power than Bantam's Continental engine. The engine gave better performance. Willys also modified the body design slightly, but the fundamental vehicle concept remained Bantam's invention.
Ford made more dramatic styling changes. Ford modified the grille from Bantam's rounded design to a flat vertical grille with horizontal slots. This Ford grille design became the iconic Jeep face that everyone recognizes today. The flat Ford grille was easier to manufacture and mass production than Bantam's rounded grille. Ford's grille modification became the standard Jeep look, even though Bantam created the original vehicle. The Army tested all three prototypes: Bantam BRC-40, Willys Quad, and Ford Pygmy. All three vehicles were similar because all three were based on Bantam's design. The Army decided that Willys had the best engine and Ford had the best manufacturability. The Army created a standardized design combining elements from all three manufacturers, but the core vehicle architecture came from Bantam. The standardized military Jeep used the Willys engine, Ford's flat grille, and Bantam's basic chassis design. The final Jeep was a hybrid, but Bantam's contribution was foundational. Without Bantam's original BRC-40, there would be no Jeep. Bantam invented the vehicle. Willys and Ford refined and produced it. The production contracts went to Willys and Ford. Willys would build the most Jeeps during World War II. Ford would build hundreds of thousands under license. Bantam received a tiny contract for just 2,675 vehicles. Bantam's reward for inventing the Jeep was being shut out of Jeep production. Bantam created the most important military vehicle in history and got almost nothing in return. Bantam's tragic end. American Bantam never recovered from losing the Jeep contract. Bantam invented the vehicle but couldn't produce it in volume. Bantam's factory was too small. Bantam couldn't compete with Willys and Ford production capacity. Bantam was squeezed out of the product Bantam created. Instead of building Jeeps, Bantam built trailers. The Army contracted Bantam to manufacture small cargo trailers towed behind Jeeps. Bantam built trailers for the very vehicles Bantam invented. Bantam watched Willys and Ford produce millions of Jeeps while Bantam made accessories. The irony was crushing. After World War II, Bantam tried to survive by building other vehicles. Bantam attempted to manufacture small cars and commercial vehicles, but Bantam never recovered financially. Bantam closed permanently in 1956. Bantam died in obscurity while Jeep became a global icon. Bantam's contribution to automotive history was forgotten. Willys trademarked the name Jeep after the war. The origin of the name Jeep is debated, possibly from GP for general purpose or from a Popeye comic character. Regardless, Willys owned the name Jeep legally. Bantam, who actually invented the vehicle, had no rights to the name Jeep. Bantam was erased from Jeep history. For decades, official Jeep history credited Willys as the inventor. Ford was acknowledged for production contributions. Bantam was rarely mentioned. The Bantam BRC-40 prototype was forgotten. Bantam's role in creating the Jeep was buried. Only automotive historians who researched military procurement records discovered Bantam's true contribution. Modern Jeep enthusiasts now recognize Bantam's crucial role. The Bantam BRC-40 is acknowledged as the first true Jeep prototype. Automotive museums display Bantam vehicles alongside Willys and Ford Jeeps. Bantam finally receives credit for inventing the Jeep, though this recognition came decades too late to save Bantam as a company. The Bantam story represents how small companies can create revolutionary products but lack resources to capitalize on their inventions. Bantam had the engineering brilliance to design the Jeep in 49 days, but Bantam couldn't build 600,000 Jeeps. Bantam created value that larger companies captured. This pattern repeats throughout industrial history, but Bantam's case is particularly tragic because the Jeep became so culturally important. This is the Bantam secret. American Bantam invented the Jeep. The Bantam BRC-40 was the first prototype that proved the Jeep concept worked. Bantam met the Army's impossible 49-day deadline when Ford and Willys refused. Then the Army took Bantam's blueprints and gave them to competitors who had the production capacity Bantam lacked. The iconic flat Jeep grille everyone recognizes, that was Ford's modification to Bantam's original rounded design. The Willys engine that millions of Jeeps powered, that replaced Bantam's Continental engine. But the fundamental vehicle, the chassis, suspension, concept, and design, came from Bantam's desperate 49-day engineering sprint. American Bantam invented the Jeep, then built trailers for the Jeeps, while Willys and Ford claimed all the glory. That's the Bantam secret. The greatest military vehicle in history was stolen from its inventor.